Hello, I'm Ollie and this is Simple Watch Reviews, where I review simple watches in a straightforward way. Today, how useful actually are the features our watches have? Every time I review a watch, I will list the different features of that watch. So that could be functions of a watch. So does it have a rotating bezel? Does it have a date window? Does it, if it's a digital watch, have an alarm or a timer? That kind of thing. Or they could be more to do with the construction of the watch. What is the level of water resistance, for example, or does it have anti-reflective coating on the crystal? And I was thinking the other day, how useful actually are those features? I know personally there are only a very few features of the watches I own that I really value. So I thought I would make a video today talking about that. Do let me know in the comments what you think about my opinions of each of the things I'm going to go through. But I've ended up deciding there are probably only 4 or 5 features of a watch that I find really valuable. So let's start with the most obvious one, the ability to tell the time. Now, in days gone past, having a wristwatch or indeed a pocket watch, having a clock that you could carry around with you would have been hugely valuable. But nowadays, it's much less valuable because we all have these. We all have phones which tend to be much more accurate in terms of our time telling than our watches. Our phones will sync to a kind of central signal, an atomic signal, so the time will always be exactly right on our phones. But I think watches have one big advantage over our phones, and that's the fact that they are glanceable. The information your watch gives you, you can get in a split second, whereas pulling your phone out of your pocket or your bag and switching it on so you can see the time is going to take a lot longer. Many people who aren't watch owners use the phone argument as their reason for not having a watch. Oh, I don't need a watch, I've got my phone with me anyway. But I think having that glanceable information on your wrist is really useful. And in fact, the value of that glanceable information has been proved by smartwatches. So manufacturers like Apple and Google have realised that people really value being able to very quickly and easily access information. Something that they can do in smartwatches for notifications and things like that without having to get their phone out. So for me, the ability to tell the time is a really important feature of a watch. Now that may sound like a very obvious thing to say, but the thing I would add to that is I don't necessarily need to tell the time with split second accuracy. So I am fine with the time on my watch being up to a minute out. That doesn't really bother me. It's only if I'm catching a train or something like that and I'm running late, then it might be a problem. In the vast majority of cases, a reasonably accurate approximation of the time is good enough. Next up then, we have date. I don't know about you, but I really struggle to remember what the date is. So having, again, a glanceable date on my watch is very useful for me. I definitely don't use it as often as I use the time, but I do use it occasionally, probably a couple of times a day. And I also have to say, as I get older, I have come to value cyclopses on watches. Next up, we have the day of the week. Now, many people think that date windows on watches can ruin the symmetry of the dial, and that is definitely true in some cases. I think day windows are even worse. They almost always make the dial feel slightly off balance. And yet, having the day of the week can be useful sometimes. It's not something I value nearly as much as having the date, but in some situations, I do quite like having the day. The two main ones for me are when I'm on my summer holiday and I want an easy way to remember what day of the week it is, because often I'm so relaxed that I forget. And similarly, over the Christmas period, when I tend to have a bit of time off work, it's nice to know what the day of the week is so I don't completely fall into a festive coma. Next up are 2 more features that I find really useful, but sadly you rarely see them on the same watch. The first of those is a countdown bezel. Now, I do not use that for diving. I can barely swim, to be honest with you, but I do use my countdown bezels for timing almost every time I wear a dive watch. So if I'm cooking the dinner in the evening, for example, a countdown bezel is a really simple way to time things. It's incredibly quick to set, and like the time and date, it is glanceable. It's really handy, and I really value countdown bezels on my watches as a result of that. The next one is the ability to track a different time zone, but critically I like that ability to be something that is always visible on the watch. So I don't, for example, on a digital watch want to have to press a load of buttons in order to see what the time is in a different location. So I love analog GMT watches. I think the presence of the fourth hand gives the watch a little something extra design-wise, but it's also really handy. So in my day job, I work with people in other countries, in India in particular. So having a rough idea of what the time is where they are can be very useful to me. And I love just having that as glanceable information on my wrist. Next up are 3 watch functions that for me personally have definitely been superseded by mobile phones. Those are the stopwatch, the countdown timer and the alarm. All of those are things I can do on many of my watches, my digital watches in particular, but they always feel like a bit of a faff to do. You have to press a load of buttons and it can take quite a long time to do it. Setting any of those things up on your mobile phone tends to be much, much easier. So I have to confess, when I want to do those things, it's almost always my phone that I turn to, even if I'm wearing a watch that technically could do them. Next up is a feature of digital watches, which I rarely use, but when I do, it's very useful. And it's something I would never even consider using my phone for, and that's an hourly chime. So if you are doing a task, if you are doing something that's going to take a while to do, and you want to kind of roughly keep track of time without having to be too precise about it, having that little beep on your wrist every hour can be really, really handy. I remember growing up as a kid when everybody got their first digital watches, and in class at school, on the hour, every hour, you would get a chorus of beeps going off. It's certainly a feature that has the potential to be annoying, but in the right situations, I think it can be really useful. And then finally, I wanted to talk about 3 things that are more to do with the construction of the watch rather than being features. So the first of those is water resistant. So I own loads of dive watches, typically with 200 meters of water resistance, sometimes more than that. I think I've got a couple, I've got 300 meters. As I said earlier, I can barely swim, so that level of water resistance is not actually that useful for me, but I do like the reassurance of having at least 100 meters of water resistance, so that I know that if for some reason I need to plunge my hand into a bucket of water or something like that, I'm not going to have to worry about the watch. Next up is lume, something I find really, really useful when it's done well. There's something about the ability to be able to tell the time even in the dark, which can at times be really, really helpful. It's not something you're going to need all the time, clearly, but when you do need it, it's great to have it. And let's be honest, lume is just fun as well. I do quite enjoy sometimes just charging up some of my watches, turning off the lights and watching them glow. And then the final thing is legibility. For me, that is hugely important in watches, and I think that's one of the reasons I tend to gravitate to military style watches, typically with black dials. I love watches that I can just glance at and immediately tell the time, where I don't have to think about it for a second. That's one of the reasons I like simple watches. I don't like overcomplicated watches with loads going on the dial. I typically like 3 or 4 handlers that I can look at and get the information I need very, very quickly. I think decent anti-reflective coating on the crystal is an important part of that, as well as dial and hand design. When all those things come together well, I think it creates a great watch. So those are my views on the features our watches are packed with. Some of them I think are enormously valuable, some of them I barely use at all. Do let me know what you think in the comments. Give the video a thumbs up if you liked it, and please also consider subscribing for more simple watch reviews.